and welcome to Council meeting number 4498, being held on this evening, the 19th of July 2021. This is the last meeting of the Council for this Council term before we go into caretaker mode, which is on the 6th of August until the election. So this is an important meeting. It marks the end of 4 years of hard work by councillors, staff and engagement on many levels with our community. So I'll make the acknowledgement to country. I would like to show my respects and acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land, of elders past, present and emerging, on which this meeting takes place. Nick?
Yeah, council prayer, councillors and our guests. We thank you, Lord, for the honour of being called by our fellow citizens to this office of honour and trust. Give us grace, diligently and honourably, free from private interests or prejudice, to discharge the duties entrusted to us to the common good and as in your sight, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. Right, well, I noticed that everybody is with us this evening, so there's no apologies. Declarations of interest, are there any?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. If I can find a bit of paper to read it out, I will. It's only here it is. My apologies. Yes, Mr. Mayor, I declare a non-significant non-pecuniary interest in item 3.1, motion regarding Reby Road, in the interest of being that my place of residence is near to the no-stopping zones in question. In determining a code of conduct complaint against me by Councillor Collins about my participation in the matter at the local traffic committee meeting on 18 June 2020, the Office of Local Government determined that they were satisfied there was no pecuniary interest arose. In respect to the non-pecuniary interest, the licensed investigator engaged by Council found that the declared interest exemption for the conferral of loss or personal benefit other than conferred or lost as a member of a community or broader class of people affected by the decision provided by section 5.9F of the Code of Conduct made the interest non-significant. Now, this would clearly allow me to participate in the matter. However, I will elect not to. In the interest of this being an extremely important matter, it must be dealt with on safety issues and should not be distracted. And even if in my absence, should not be distracted about my entitlement, whether I can participate in the matter or not. But I will, however, withdraw from the meeting for that time.
Thank you, Councillor Sanderson. Are there any further declarations? Councillor Collins.
Just a question, Mr. Mayor. At what point do I address the incorrect statements made by Councillor Sanderson just then? Would you like me to do that now, or would you like me to?
No, you don't have that opportunity.
Because he made an untrue statement.
Councillor Collins, do you have a declaration of interest?
No, just interest.
Okay. Are there any further declarations of interest received? Councillor Miles.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I've got a similarly non-significant non-pecuniary interest in item 4.6.
Thank you. No further declarations? If not, we'll move on to confirmation of the minutes. Is there a mover? Councillor McLaughlin, is there a seconder? Councillor Sanderson, is there any debate?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, there's one very minor correction, if I could, Mr. Mayor. That is in respect to, unfortunately, I've moved everything aside, looking for the other bit of paper. With respect to the item to do with the minutes of one of the Access, Inclusion and Seniors Committee meetings.
Could you give us the page, please?
Yes, it would be, unfortunately, the page marker has fallen out. Sorry, I was a bit, yeah,
page 15.
On page yeah, this is page 16. It says on the minutes at the top. I did hand up a handwritten note about the acknowledgement of the service of Mrs. Barbara Dorsch. I did put on the note, but although it was put above the line, Mrs. Dorsch is a holder of an Order of Australia, so I believe the correspondence hasn't gone out as yet. So I wonder whether that could be acknowledged in her title. So it should be Barbara Dorsch AM.
Okay, that's noted. Any further comments in relation to the minutes?
Yeah, just from me, there were a couple of questions without notice which were sent to us and an answer by email, and I think that probably should have been included in the business paper. So if they could be included next time, I think that would be wise. As in next week's business paper. I'll resend the emails as that's fine. It's mainly about the budget items.
Thank you, Councillor Collins. Any further comments in relation to the minutes? If not, I'll put the minutes. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried unanimously. We now move to the first order of business, which is 2.1, which is a mayoral minute, and I'd like to move the recommendations that are in the minute. There's a second to Councillor Crasoy. I'll just read them out so everybody is aware of what the recommendations are. That the report be received and noted. The Council notes the significant impact on Council's revenue of the New South Wales Government's proposed reforms to the infrastructure contributions of 4.5 million over 15 years. The Council supports, item 3, Council supports the local government New South Wales and NESROC advocacy efforts, including submissions to the parliamentary inquiry into the Environmental Planning and Assessment Amendment, Infrastructure Contributions Bill 2021, and 4, the Council writes to the Premier, the Honourable Gladys Berejiklian, the Treasurer, the Honourable Dominic Perrottet, the Minister for Planning and Open Space, the Honourable Rob Stokes, the Minister for Local Government, the Honourable Shelley Hancock, Opposition Leader Mr Chris Minns, and the Local Member of Parliament and Minister for Counter-Terrorism and Corrections, the Honourable Anthony Roberts. And it's to advocate for additional modelling, consultation and mechanisms to ensure contributions are paid in a timely way and that no council is worse off under the proposals. Now, in relation to this matter, development infrastructure contributions help deliver the infrastructure needed as communities grow and change. They are a means of financing public infrastructure, increased services provisions, and is required as a direct or indirect result of new dwellings, alterations, additions, knockdown rebuilds, and new non-residential developments such as office and retail spaces. Council requires contributions from all types of developments to deliver high-quality infrastructure, open space, services and placemaking activities that communities and governments expect. Rate revenue is required to fund ongoing delivery of maintenance of existing services and assets. The implications of this, although the details of the infrastructure contributions reforms are not available, modelling based on the information available indicates significant reductions, significant reduced income for NESROC councils. And this is an issue that's been looked at collectively by our Northern Region Organisation of Council. Declines are likely to occur to both the S711 contributions and the S712 fixed rate levy projected income levels, depending on details as yet unsighted and not consulted upon. Under the proposed reforms, NESROC councils face a loss of 171 million in the first 5 years, 325 million over 10 years, and 461 million over 15 years. And there is a chart there, and it's clearly unsustainable for local government to take this sort of reduction in its income. The issue is currently before the New South Wales Parliament, has potential to impact on the operations for decades to come. It is critical that all councils proactively advocate for meaningful modelling, consultation and mechanisms to ensure that councils are no worse off. Because what the situation is, and it's highlighted in a letter I received from the Lord Mayor of the City of Sydney, and I'll just read a couple of bits out of that which I think are quite pertinent. I write to you about the shocking changes to the infrastructure contributions that the state government is trying to rush through Parliament under cover of budget. As you will be aware, the proposed amendments of the Act will radically change the way local infrastructure is planned, funded and delivered. The changes proposed effectively shifting contribution income from councils into state government coffers. To compensate councils for cutting off this revenue stream, the government has said it will allow us as a council to charge higher rates. This leaves council with an impossible choice to stop building and maintaining infrastructure or start charging residents more in rates. Regardless, our community will be worse off. So this is a quite crucial issue, not only for this council, but for all councils across New South Wales. And as the mayoral minute states, it is a collective response by all the councils in the Northern Region organisation of councils to advocate to restore this funding source for local government, and it is very important for our community as well. So, is there any debate in relation to the matter? Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was the only councillor who represented Hunters Hill Council at the last meeting of NESROC. There was a very long presentation given on this matter, and part of the presentation back up what you've just read from the Lord Mayor of Sydney. What will be occurring, there will be charges that will go to state government from developers. Now, to compensate developers, they remove some of our rights in relation to charging, in particular in our case, section 7.12 contributions. Some referred to it as a cost shift. I would regard it as a revenue shift. So this is a new way of milking councils for state revenue. I know a lot of councillors will agree with my view that a big part of council is to be advocates for our community. And on this, we must advocate. At the end of the day, what will happen? Inevitably, if this goes through, we will lose, as indicated in some of the papers I've seen, and supported by my reading of the budgetary material, we will lose $300,000 a year or of something of that order. And at the end of the day, the reality is that will need to be made up by income in some other area, potentially rates. I don't see why our residents should be subsidising development. Development contributions are very fairly made. As I think I've cited before, the case of development near my own home, where we've seen truck after truck of sandstone removed, and the result was one of our local roads was just completely destroyed. This proposed legislation is totally unfair, and I thank the General Manager and others who have done work in this area for the matter that will come up later in the paper. But it's extremely important that Council advocate on this matter. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Is there any further discussion, debate? Yes, Councillor Miles.
Just to say, I guess, Mr. Mayor, that this move to a sort of Victorian model of developer contributions that gives the state powers to level contributions didn't work in Victoria either, where you had the 711, 712 contributions that council would usually see, the old Section 94A contributions, go to state government, and then councils ended up levying their own developer contributions again, which did nothing but drive up the cost of apartments and you know, in an environment where young people are finding it very difficult to get into the market. This would again serve as a mechanism for young people not to be able to get into the property market. So I think that everything that is in the recommendation is worthwhile doing, and I'd hate to see New South Wales go down the same route as Victoria, where developers are essentially paying for state infrastructure, and then you know, councils are forced to, given that our revenues will be impacted to the tune of $4.5 million over the next 15 years, we'll have to plug that gap somehow. And as we know, our budgetary position at the moment is atrocious. And this would be, you know, a death rattle for us, because $4.5 million is a huge sum of money, and would equate to another massive rate increase. So I'm very supportive of what's in the recommendation here.
Any further debate? If not, right of reply. I don't agree with Councillor Miles' comments that we're in a death rattle of our finances. I think that is not correct based on the information that we've got, but certainly the outcome of the government stripping this money out of council for developer benefit and paying to our community, I think is not acceptable. And advocacy is one of the mechanisms we have to put our case forward. So with that, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried unanimously. We now move to item 2.2, which is again another mayoral minute, which I'd like to remove the recommendation that the mayoral minute be received and noted, and Councillor Sanderson, the Deputy Mayor, has seconded that. The purpose of this motion is the celebration of Hunters Hill Day 2021. The day is significant and to be celebrated as it symbolises the determination of this community to maintain local governance and its shared values, which it has done successfully for 160 years. It marks the occasion when government received its notification that it was not proceeding with the proposed mergers of Hunters Hill Council, Ryde City Council and the Lane Cove Council. On the same day, the Court of Appeal handed down its judgment declaring that the merger proposal was invalid. This is something which Council earlier on in its term embraced, and it has been celebrated successfully over the past few years. And this year is a bit different because of COVID. Oh no, last year was, I think, a bit similar, that we tried something innovative to make sure that the community had the opportunity to participate. Fortunately, our municipality, there is a strong sense of community built on a shared values, shared history and shared challenges which we have faced together. Hunters Hill Day being celebrated on the 31st of July 2021, as we are presently in lockdown due to COVID restrictions, it is not possible at this time to predict what the restrictions will be and will apply on the day. So clearly we could and should still celebrate in the best way we can in compliance with the strict orders, which I guess will be getting a takeaway, getting home delivery from our local restaurants and cafes to celebrate at home together with your family. So I strongly support this celebration, as I feel that the vast majority who live here in our municipality embrace the sentiment and the occasion. So is there any further discussion in relation to the matter? Yes, Councillor Sampson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It is sad that we will probably, well, almost certainly be celebrating the 4th Hunters Hill Day in lockdown. There have been different celebrations so far, but Hunters Hill people are very adaptive, and while some people got together in small groups at restaurants last year, I took takeaway away from one of our local restaurants and was delighted to have a meal with a small group of people, including our now Citizen of the Year. I think we had looked forward to this being celebrated on a Saturday so we could have a barbecue. That will not to be. But at the end of the day, this is an incredibly important day. If the events of that time, just over 4 years ago, had not gone through, this council would not be here. So I think it is something that is well worth celebrating, and I commend the mayoral minute. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any further discussion? Councillor Crassoy. Could you unmute, please? Thank you. Yep.
Thank you. I got out of the habit for a little while there.
Yes, happy.
Yeah, we're back. Firstly, I would just like to actually thank our emeritus mayors, Sue Hoopman, Richard Quinn and Mark Bennett, who during their terms on council over the years worked so hard to retain our local values and to retain local planning in local hands. More recently, during this most recent assault, I think the hard work of our councillors, Justine McLaughlin, Peter Astridge, Meredith Shiel and Gary Bird should be acknowledged in name. These mayors and councillors recognise that whichever party holds the reins at Macquarie Street, our council has been and will continue to be under threat of amalgamation. A great majority of our community aren't quite sure what that could mean, but I've been watching recently the community of Blackwattle Bay, Ultimo and Pyrmont battle to defend their way of life against up to 12 45-storey buildings. And a shiver runs through me picturing the compromises that some people would be willing to make in order to sell off our way of life by changing our local planning laws for a development free for all, just 10 kilometres from the CBD. So for me, this marking of an occasion isn't as much about a day to gloat over our most recent victory. It's a day to reflect on the many occasions that council and community have had to fight off the bogeyman. And it's to caution us to make sure that we stay firm in our values and our principles and not be hoodwinked by shiny baubles or by antics that attempt to undermine our council's capacity to keep delivering local governance and to continue representing local values and local democratic decision making. So whether you celebrate Hunters Hill Day by supporting a local business with a takeaway dinner, or whether you don't even really think about what it's about, I hope that each year as it pops up in the calendar, just a few more residents will recognise the importance of our independence, because mark my words, they will come at us again. And the sooner we get over the petty politics and start working together again as a community, the better armed we will be to fend them off once again, because we will, because Hunters Hill is worth fighting for. So thank you, Mr. Mayor, for your minute.
Councillor Collins.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to clarify with a question from Councillor Crassoy. When this motion to have this Hunters Hill Day, didn't you vote against it and call it divisive?
Councillor Crassoy, do you wish to answer that?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. No, I don't.
Okay, thank you.
But you didn't, sorry, you didn't vote.
No, Councillor.
That's a question, Mr. Mayor. I asked the question and I'm entitled to have an answer. If she decides not to answer it, that's fine, but I'm entitled to ask the question. Mr. Mayor, I asked Councillor Crassoy if she voted against the motion for Hunters Hill Day.
No, she's decided on the clause.
Doesn't want to answer the question. Okay, interesting.
It's fine, Mr. Mayor.
No, you don't have to.
No, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. I
Okay.
don't mind being harassed. So I voted against the original motion at the time because I did think it was divisive. I thought there were some tensions in the community. And I personally was looking forward to celebrating our independence and just moving on as a community from it. Certainly over the last term of council, I've realised the danger that allowing any state government who happens to be in the Macquarie Street seat to infiltrate our council and to undermine the strength of our council and to undermine the good work that our council does. And so it's become more important to me. And in reading, not that fighting against amalgamation was never important, but this particular day worried me somewhat. But in reading the Mayor's recent mayoral minute, particularly this year with Mookaboola being pushed further and further away because of COVID, and particularly reading some of the things that are happening around the state and the loss of our heritage and the loss of democratic voices, I feel, and it's quite okay too, that my thoughts on the day have changed as I've seen the strength in being reminded of the importance of fighting for your local values. I hope that answers the question, Mr. Mayor.
I think it does. Any further discussion? If not, right of reply. I'd like to echo those comments of Councillor Krasoi, but I'd like to add to it another layer, because we shouldn't forget the role our community played in the battle, with over 80% of our community supporting the process that was going on. And I'd like to particularly note the work of Mr. Philip Jenkin, AM, who, along with myself, as co-conveners of Save Hunters Hill Municipality Coalition, worked very hard for 5 years to inform and encourage the community to understand the implications of what was happening. And that work, along with many, many people in our community, achieved an outcome. And Councillor Krasoi is right. It's not one particular state government, because I was also involved in fending off a proposal from a Labor state government in 2003, when again they tried to merge us with the Right Council, as it was then known. And there was another one back in, I think it was 1980 or 83 or something. So it does continually crop up, and the community has very successfully sustained itself over the last 160 years. And it is very important that it does commit to and continue to fight for its shared values and the importance of the uniqueness of the area that we live in. So I'd like to also pay tribute to all those residents and our local citizens who put themselves out an enormous amount of hours making sure, doing ribbons, tying ribbons, posters, banners, protests, either locally or under the Tree of Knowledge or in Martin Place. We all rallied as a community, and I think that was an exceptional statement of what we feel about this area and why we want to maintain our local democracy as a very important pillar of our unique community. So with that, I now put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Are you in favour or against, Councillor Collins?
I'm against it.
And Councillor Miles, I didn't see a hand.
Voted in favour of the receiving.
So for the record, for the person taking the minutes, all councillors were in favour except for Councillor Collins.
Sure.
That now brings us to the next matter on the business paper, which is item 3.1, which is a notice of motion, and Councillor Sanderson has indicated he's leaving because he's declared an interest. So this one is brought to us by Councillor Miles. Do you wish to move your notice of motion?
I will, Mr. Mayor, but I believe there's a number of speakers.
There are, you're right. Thank you. So before we get to that, we have Mel, are you there?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Yep, the council officer.
Yep, we have Alistair Sharp and Janet in.
Right, and Alistair is coming on Zoom.
He is on Zoom now. He's ready to go.
Okay, Dr. Sharp, would you like to do your presentation? 3 minutes, please. Won't start the clock until you're ready, so it's fine. You need to unmute. Dr. Sharp, could you unmute? Thank you.
Good now?
Yep, we can hear you.
Great, great. Right, Reeby Road and the stopping. As recorded in the minutes of the local area traffic committee, attended by Councillor Collins, there was a decision to install no stopping zone in the southern part of Reeby Road, just before the bend. So I'm surprised, since this decision was passed unanimously, I'm surprised to find that Councillor Collins, who was amongst those at the meeting, is now opposed to it. I'm also confused that his motion should attempt to direct council to reverse a recommendation made by a body over which council has no direct control. But especially I'm confused by the need to install a no stopping zone on a narrow road fitted with double lines. Cars don't have any legal right to park here or to stop here, but they do. Now, Reeby Road forms part of regional route RR2 of the Hunters Hill Bike Plan, which was adopted by council just a few months ago. And this regional route connects Gladesville Bridge with Fig Tree Bridge. It's a route used by both commuting and recreational cyclists, and it runs down Reeby Road. The lower part of Reeby Road is narrow and steep and leads into a blind corner. Parked vehicles here force traffic over the double white line, creating an unnecessary hazard, especially to cyclists. Of course, this is the reason it's marked with a double white line at the moment. And the double white line should be sufficient by itself, because New South Wales Road Users Handbook says you must not park within 3 metres of a double centre line. But vehicles do park here. So I urge council to reject this motion, and in recognition that Reeby Road is identified by council as a major cycling route, not only should the lower part of Reeby Road be identified as a no stopping zone, but council should direct its rangers to ensure that vehicles don't park here. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sharp. Are there any questions? Councillor McLaughlin.
Not directly to Dr. Sharp, but thank you for your presentation, but through you, Mr. Mayor, to the General Manager. Perhaps you can clarify for us, because I think it'll be important moving forward, whether or not the council has the authority to override a decision of the LATC?
Through you, to you, Mr. Acting General Manager.
Mr. Dutton, I think it'd have to go back, wouldn't it? It'd be referred back through for re-endorsement.
Right, okay, thank you.
Oh, you're on mute, Stuart.
Sorry about that. Through you, Mr. Mayor, the local traffic committee is a separate body, but any decision of the local traffic committee has to come to council for approval, not the other way around. So a decision of the traffic committee, whilst they have to endorse signage, etc., the council does make its own decisions.
Thank you.
Yeah,
it's a technical advisory committee. It's not doesn't look at merits. Is there any further questions of Dr. Sharp? If not, thank you very much for your time this evening, Dr. Sharp.
Thank you.
We now move to Mrs. Williams. Would you like to unmute yourself and present your comment to the council?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you for this opportunity to address the council and represent the residents about the safety issues concerned with the bend. And I'd like to reinforce what Alistair Sharp has said about it being a dangerous blind downhill corner where bicycles especially come down at speed. And just to give a bit of historical perspective, we first moved here about over 40 years ago, and we were warned then by residents that there'd been a bad accident between a truck and a motorbike at the bottom of the road. So we residents knew about the safety issues there, but visitors and other people didn't. And it took 20 years for an accident, about another bad accident. And that was a friend of mine who was travelling up Reeby Road from my place, and at the corner, she ended up with a cyclist coming down on the wrong side of the road and ending up on her bonnet. Now, luckily nobody was badly hurt in that, but as a result of that, I petitioned the council to please do something about the corner, and thank you, you did. And you installed 2 centre lines, the double white centre lines around the corner, which I asked for, but there must have been a bit of paint left over because unfortunately they kept going up the road and they got as far as the avenue with that. So we let that go and it's been there ever since. Now look, I'd like to say about garbage trucks too, they would find it easier to back down this dead end street without a turning circle if there was no parking allowed at the bend. And I was going up the street this morning at 7:30 and I met one backing down the road, and luckily they beep, beep, beep all the time, so it's easy to avoid them. And it was only able to back around the bend because there were no cars parked there. So goodness knows what happens when the cars are there. And I don't know if they've ever complained about it. But I walk in the area of Mara's Sisters, and apparently a year ago, yellow lines were painted around the corners in the vicinity of Prince George's Parade and Nelson Parade. When Waste Management complained to the council, they couldn't access the area to service it due to Mara's Sisters students parking their cars around the corners. And so yellow lines were installed, and apparently since then, according to a local resident, there's been no complaints and 100% success rate with that. Now, about the same time frame, about a year ago, we requested that yellow lines be painted around the bend. We didn't want unsightly notices on poles, particularly. So if they would please, if they had a choice, we had a choice, could we please have that? Well, for whatever reason, the decision was left to the staff, and then poles were installed. And I assume that complaints ensued because the notices were removed, but the poles are still there. And all we residents are asking for at this stage is for our original request for yellow lines to be respected. That's all. And if there's any complaints from the school about this, I mean, why can't their students park in Mount Street? It's got far more room and there's a turning circle, plenty of room. So what we would like you to do is please install the yellow lines we originally asked for. And that's why we're putting you on notice just to simply do this. Okay.
Thank you. Are there any? Yeah, thank you. Are there any questions, Councillor McLaughlin? Councillor McLaughlin.
Myself, thank you. Yes, again, I guess I'm not sure who to direct the question to, but my question would be: was the school consulted originally on the no stopping signs? I'm sure it was, and what was their view?
I don't know. I don't know if they were consulted.
I don't think anybody here would know. Would you know, Mr. Acton?
I'm not aware, Director.
No, I also wasn't around at the time, so I don't know either.
Sorry,
I was there.
We'd have to check.
They were.
They were.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for clarifying.
Are there any further? Yes, Councillor Miles.
Sorry, just to Janet. You're saying, just to go through the issues, your preference would be for there to be the installation of yellow lines rather than the actual signage on the street. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I'm wondering why they were removed. I suppose somebody complained in the street, did they? I don't know.
I believe so. And you've also said that the double lines that go up to the avenue, you would have preferred for that just to be on the bend where the danger is?
Totally. That's what I asked for. And when they appeared up the road, I was very surprised. However, it's harder to undo something, isn't it, than do it? So I left it.
A bit of black paint can fix most things. Is there any further questions of Mrs. Williams? If not, thank you very much for your presentation this evening.
Thank you, Ross, very much.
Thank you. We now move to
There's a third
the
speaker.
presentation to be read out. Mrs. Dowse, could you?
Yep. So Gina Amor said, we have received a letter informing us of a proposed changes to Reby Road. As the owner and resident of number 12, I would like to submit a strong opposition to the proposed no stopping zones on our cul-de-sac and specifically around our property. First and foremost, this will leave us, the residents of number 12, with no permitted parking outside our property. We currently park 2 vehicles outside our house. If these no stopping zones go ahead, this will leave us with no choice but to have to park our vehicles further up the road where our neighbours actually park their cars outside their property. Our 69-year-old father, who suffers from heart conditions, will have to park a minimum of 20 to 30 metres up the road from his home. This will be further detrimental to the poor weather conditions and may leave him vulnerable to falls and accidents. Furthermore, where will our visitors park, elderly and young? Where will any delivery people, couriers, Ubers, etc. stop and park? We understand that these no stopping signs are being looked at for safety reasons, but we kindly ask you to consider the safety of us residents who will have to park further away from our homes with shopping, elderly and children.
Thank you. Okay, that completes the presentations this evening. Who moved it's Councillor Miles. Do you wish to move your
I might move, based on some of the comments made by the residents there, I might amend this recommendation, because it seems to me, I'll amend the recommendation that that recommendation 3.4 part 4 of the local traffic committee on the 18th of June, as read there in point 1, be referred to the local, be referred back to the local traffic committee for review after consultation with the immediate residents. 2, that the bare poles that have been installed at Reby Road be removed. And at 3, I'll add a point 3 that reads that the local area traffic committee also consider removing the double lines from number 12 to the avenue. In line with the comments made by Janet from number 9.
Right, well, there's a lot of words there, so we'll make sure we've got them. Could the minute taker please indicate whether or not they have been able to capture that? And maybe best if you could read it out for us. Oh, here it is on the screen. Is that what was intended, Councillor Collins? There was a third part to that.
Also consider removing the double line from number 12. That's fine. And number 1 should read that. So remove the first two words. That recommendation 3.4 of the local traffic committee on the 18th of June 2020 be referred back to the local traffic committee for review in consultation with the immediate residents. That sounds correct. Correct. Yep.
Okay, so is there a seconder? Councillor Collins, are you seconding this motion?
Mr. Mayor.
Yes. Mr. General Manager.
Myself. I just had a message from the director. I think there's already a resolution to remove the double yellow lines. Is that correct, Mr. Dutton?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, from the history I've looked at of this, one of the original motions, which I think was endorsed, was that the no stopping zone from 11 metres north, sorry, I've just read the wrong one, to remove the double centre lines 20 metres from the nose of the island to 11 metres from the driveway of number 14. So basically 20 metres from the nose of the island down to where these no stopping zones were talked about was to be removed.
Okay, so that's redundant.
I don't think it is, Mr. Mayor, because I think that needs to be reviewed, because that only goes about halfway down the road. So you're only removing essentially out the front of Councillor Sanderson's residence is the only stretch that would be removed. That would impact that would mean essentially that numbers 14 and 12 would, as Dr. Sharp pointed out, not be able to utilise the parking that's existing parking out the front of their houses.
We'd leave it there, councillors.
I'd be happy for the local area traffic committee to look at that. But just looking at the map, which I've got up here, that probably wouldn't resolve all of the issues.
Okay. Do you wish to speak to your motion?
Yeah, I will in brief, Mr. Mayor. Again, as Dr. Sharp pointed out, and I'm just looking at the map again, the double lines being up to the avenue actually mean that technically there should be no parking on that street at all. So we do need to review that and take it seriously. Residents of number 12 have, as I understand it, reached out to council a number of times about these car parking spaces. They are elderly and wanted to find some sort of resolution to not having to carry shopping from essentially the avenue down to their homes. Understand that it is a component of the bike route and it is a busy corner, but this motion, I guess, to take it back to the local area traffic committee will allow us to look at all of those issues, and particularly along the bend of Reeby Road, and the treatment of the double lines and the extent to which we use the no stopping measures without signs, but with the yellow markings on the road.
Is there any further debate?
Yeah, I'll speak to it briefly, Mr. Mayor. Look, my issue with this particular situation, and I just want to clarify for Dr. Sharp, with the local area traffic committee is a technical committee that looks at issues that are being referred to it by council. So it's not necessarily from the local area traffic committee. It's not necessarily about whether consultation was done or anything like that. It's just about whether it's technically safe and acceptable. So there's no, from the technical perspective, that's the sort of outcome of it. My problem with it was the consultation, which I for the life of me couldn't understand who had been spoken to or what, other than the deputy mayor, who as was left in this particular situation, who was presiding over the matter as chairing the local area traffic committee, brought it as an issue to council, voted on it in the council meeting, and I couldn't actually find anyone else that had actually raised the issue. So my concern was more about the process that the deputy mayor was using.
Councillor Collins, you're out of order.
Why am I out of order?
I'll tell you. You're out of order. Clause 1511D, which is insults or make personal reflections or imputes improper motives. That is clear to me.
What did I impute?
That the deputy mayor was not acting proper.
Well, his house is right there. You think that's okay?
Councillor Collins, there's no debate. I've called a point of order on you.
Well, then I'd like it taken to the councillors to see whether or not it is actually okay for Deputy Mayor to actually vote on the parking restrictions out front of the house.
Look, I'm sorry.
I'd like a ruling on the point of order, Mr. Mayor. I'm entitled to that under the meeting practice. I'm entitled to have that put to the vote.
Councillor Collins, I will put it to the vote. But I'll make it very clear before it goes to a vote that we're not talking about the process. We're talking about the issue that is before us. The motion has nothing to do with the process. The motion is clearly about making changes at that location. So you need to be very clear about that.
Okay, can you please,
To the Councillor Collins.
can you clarify what you're putting to the vote then?
I'm putting to the vote whether Councillor Collins, in what he is saying in relation to the Deputy Mayor, is breaching the Code of Conduct 1511 Part D. Now, I'll put that to...
No, that's actually not very clear, Mayor. I think the question that I asked to
Councillor Collins, we're dealing with Code of Conduct issue.
Yes.
Order.
Yes, that's right.
The rest of the debate is irrelevant.
But you're the one that asserted clause 15.9.
Councillor Collins, I'm now putting that to the council for
But
a vote.
they don't know what they're voting for. That's inappropriate, and you have actually abused your position there by not clarifying exactly the point that I was making, and I have not.
No, Councillor Collins.
The point was, Mr. Mayor, I have said no. I'm entitled to be heard, Mayor.
You're not entitled to be heard in a point of order. You're not entitled to be heard.
Well, I'm entitled to.
You've asked for it to be put to the council, and I'm doing that now. I'm doing. Now, could you please wait to see what the council's view on whether that is a breach of the Code of Conduct? Now, council, I'm putting it to you for a vote as to whether or not that is proper conduct under 15.
Sorry, Mayor, you cannot actually do that legally. You cannot actually put to a vote whether I've breached the Code of Conduct. That is an abusive process, and you are not legally allowed to do that. You have to put the question that I have asked, and your point of order is not whether I breached the Code of Conduct. So you need to get your legalities right here, because you're about to make a big mistake.
Councillor Collins, last time I checked, I was chairing this meeting, and the chair is able to do what I'm saying.
You're not allowed to put me on trial.
You're dissenting against my ruling, and my ruling is that I believe that is not in the spirit of the Code of Conduct under 15.
But you cannot say I breached the Code of Conduct. You can't do that. You cannot. That's not your decision to make.
It is. I'm the chair, and I can determine a point of...
You need to be looking at the Code of Meeting Practice, Mayor, not the Code of Conduct. You need to... You should know this by now. We are talking about the Code of Meeting Practice.
Councillor Collins, I'm now going to put
there's a different
to council.
There's two documents. You're about to make a big mistake, Mayor.
No. Sorry. I'll put to the council.
Mr. Mayor, I've got a question.
No, there's no question when there's a motion of dissent.
Sorry, Mr.
Under
Mayor.
what clause?
Mr. Mayor, there is a question. I can put a question.
No, you can't.
Through you to the General Manager.
You can put a question.
Motion.
You can put a question.
No.
This is chaos.
Mr. Mayor,
you're creating chaos.
Mr. Mayor, are you going to...
I've asked you, Councillor Miles, I've asked Councillor Collins to refrain from straying away from the issue at hand in his motion, and I believe that does fall under clause 1511. Councillor Collins has challenged that, asked for a ruling on dissent, and I'm going to put that to council as to whether they think...
And may I ask a question, Mr. Mayor?
Not when we're dealing with a matter of dissent, no.
Not a matter of dissent in what, though, Mr. Mayor? In the code, we can't put a matter of code of meeting. We can put a matter of code of meeting practice, but not a code of conduct.
No, I'm talking about code of meeting practice under clause 15.
That's not what you said.
Well, that's what I'm doing. So whether
We don't know.
Point of clarification, Mr. Mayor, please.
No. We've got a matter of dissent on the table.
No one understands what you're saying, Mayor. I think you should take the question.
No, I'm dealing with the process that is within the code.
So are we.
Please, Mr. Mayor, I can't vote on this until I've had my point clarified, please.
What's going on?
Well, Councillor Crassoy, do you wish to ask a question?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
The only way we're going to move forward.
Thank you. Yeah. I'd just like a point of clarification, please. and possibly because you're being harassed, you might have gotten a little confused about which document you were referring to. So could you please clarify whether you are asking us to vote on a code of meeting practice point of order, in which case we can, or whether you'd like to seek clarification for the General Manager about asking councillors to vote on a code of conduct issue. If you could just clarify which one you're asking us to vote on. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Very happy to do that. The intent in the document I'm reading from is Code of Meeting Practice, and it's very clear that 1511 Part D is the issue that I'm dealing with. If there was any reference or comment in relation to Code of Conduct, I withdraw that because that was not the intent of what I was saying.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That clarifies it for me. Thank you.
No. So with that, we have a motion of dissent. I'll put it to the council. Those in favour? Those against? You're voting. Wait, let's get
You put the motion there. It's your issue of dissent.
Councillor Collins, Councillor Miles, please. The issue of dissent is one raised by the councillor. And so what I'm putting is that dissent.
Can you be clear about what we are actually voting on? I don't think
I'm trying to explain.
Okay, go on.
Issue. If you just give me a moment, I'm quite happy to
take all the time you need, man.
I will. The dissent has been raised against my ruling in relation to the Code of Meeting Practice in relation to clause 1511D. So does council support my
what was your ruling there? What was
my
your
ruling that you were in breach of clause 1511 under the Code of Conduct?
Because I did what?
Because you were not talking to the issue, but more importantly, you were impugning improper motives against a fellow councillor.
Mr. Mayor, I wonder if I could just clarify it. I'm reading the code here and try and just see if I've got this right. It's been a while since I've done one of these councillors, but give me a crack. The Mayor has made a ruling as an act of disorder under 15.1D, and he's entitled to do that at the meeting. It's then up to the person that he's declared the act of disorder. If they want to challenge the chair, they can challenge the chair, and actually challenge the Mayor's ruling. That's where I believe we are at the moment. So you either agree with Councillor Collins that the ruling's incorrect, and therefore you would vote in favour of the challenge, or you'd vote against. Subject to the finding of that, you're then in a position where you need to go to 15.12, and that's what the chairperson is going to ask the councillor to do in relation to the comments that he's made.
Can I ask a question to you, to the General Manager through Mayor? Am I entitled to explain what I've said? Am I entitled to justify myself, or am I not allowed to speak? I've been challenged by the Mayor and he's not allowed me to defend what I've said.
In my opinion, you had no right to challenge the Mayor's order of dissent, but his decision of dissent. But if you're now challenging that, I believe you have the right to clarify your position.
Thank you. I'll clarify my position. So the simple point that I was making was that it's not appropriate for the Deputy Mayor to make decisions and chair meetings and vote on decisions that relate directly to changing the parking restrictions directly out the front of his own house. That's all I've said. I haven't imputed motive or anything like that. It's just improper for a councillor who's elected by the people to vote on a matter that directly impacts the parking restrictions directly out the front of his own house. That's the only point that I made. So with that in mind, that is the only thing I've suggested. If the councillors believe that a councillor should be able to vote on changing the parking restrictions out the front of their own house, then I suppose I'll be alone on that. But I think that would be improper. So that's my point.
Yeah, so my point is that matter was dealt with previously.
No, that wasn't. No, sorry. You're sorry. I have to stop you there, Matt. That has not been dealt with, and that's a separate issue. I'm talking about a matter here, and you disagree. You think a councillor should be able to change the parking restrictions out the front of their own house? Yeah, just be a minute, Frank.
Well, there you go again, Councillor Collins. I'm not agreeing to councillors being able to change parking at all.
Okay, great. Well, that's all I said.
A code of meeting practice. So
can I just, on a point of order of relevancy to this particular item that's on the agenda,
it's not relevant to it.
And the councillor is not present. The councillor in question, of which we are having the debate over, whether or not he has an interest, he's not present for this particular item. Exactly. So I think it's irrelevant.
Yes,
it's not irrelevant at all. The issue was, I'm explaining why it came about. That's all. That's the only reason. And I mentioned that it was improperly dealt with. That's all.
Councillor Collins, please, let's have some order. I'll put the motion of dissent. Those in favour of my ruling, raise their hands. Those against, declare it lost.
They voted for me.
No, declare it. No, the motion of the matter of dissent is lost, and my ruling stands, and that was on the basis of Councillor Lachlan and myself, and those against was Councillor. That fulfills that requirement, I believe, Mr. Acting General Manager.
Say that again, Mr. Mayor.
Does that meet the requirements?
I think we can leave it at that, Mr. Mayor. Let's get the motion before council.
Yep. Okay. We now put the motion. Well, is there any further debate on the council motion?
Yeah. So I'll just I'll just finish what I was saying. So my issue with it mainly was the process, and now that if we can actually have a proper consultation process, we can find out what the best solution is. It seems as though there's been no issues there for a long time. And I only just learned now how it came about that those double white lines came about. So I would like it to go back to proper consultation and then back to the committee so that I'd like, it's a small enough street that all residents should have their say on this. I mean, how many houses we're talking about? Really, 10 houses. So that's simply what I'm saying. I just want it looked at properly. And I take Dr. Sharp's point about it being a cycleway. It's, there's a school zone. There's a lot to be. I feel it was rushed through without adequate consultation. So that's why I support the motion.
Any further debate? If not, right of reply, Councillor Miles.
Not necessary, Mr. Mayor.
Put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried. We now move to item 3.2. Councillor Crassoy. You need to unmute, please.
There we go. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. If you just give me a second, I'm pulling everything up on the screen.
Before you do, no, I'm sorry, we've had a late speaker, which I've agreed to. My apologies. And that's Julia Prieston. Is that person available, or is it going to be read out?
Oh, hi. Sorry, I was just...
Oh, you're there. Sorry, Julia.
Hello, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
You have 3 minutes. You have 3 minutes to put your position. So.
Great. So I think in relation to this motion that there is a real need to attract young adult locals to become further involved in our community. For too long, there has been consistent lack of representation and support of the 18 to 30-year-old age group that live in Hunters Hill. For example, sport is one of the main ways that youths can participate in our area, and this council seems to have politicised decent proposals put forward in the chamber by rejecting efforts to improve facilities and keep youths active in our area. I was born and raised in this suburb and have watched the inevitable departure of young adults from the suburb once they reach a certain age. There is less here for us than our parents and grandparents, and while youth representation on committees going forward is a step in the right direction for those interested in leadership, I query why this is being put forward in the last meeting of this term of council and why other measures to involve young people have been rejected throughout the term up until this point. I propose rather that there should be a youth committee in its own right rather than having a token youth representation on various committees. I think I speak for many young constituents of Hunters Hill by expressing that we want real and concrete ways of contributing to this great locality, and so why not provide us a platform of our own? We could take example from the Ryde Youth Council and their many initiatives to get young people active and thriving in their community, and work with council on an ongoing basis to establish efforts that capture our neglected generation. It feels otherwise like a relatively contrived effort to attract young voters before an election. Thank you.
Any questions for the Speaker? Yes, Councillor Sanderson, welcome back. You need to unmute, please.
Thank you for your address. I wondered if you could elaborate a little bit on the things you feel that youth have been excluded from that you referred to without explaining a bit further.
Thank you for your question, Councillor. I didn't actually say that youths were excluded from anything in the community. Rather, I think that there could be a more concerted effort, and that's what this motion is about. Correct me if I'm wrong, but to make an effort to include and represent youths in our community. I'm simply proposing an alternative, which would be just like the City of Ryde Council has done, which would be to establish an actual youth committee, which could advocate for activities or things within society that are represented elsewhere in the broader community and bring them local to Hunters Hill so that young people actually feel that they can contribute to our suburb.
Thank you.
Any further questions? If not, thank you very much for your presentation this evening. We now move to Councillor Crassoy, who's got a notice of motion in relation to this matter. Councillor Crassoy.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. And indeed, that could be a great idea to put to the next term of council for them to consider. It's certainly something that I'd been advocating for to our General Manager, Lisa Miss Campbell, and it was great to see her and her team actually initiate some great opportunities for youth engagement over these last few years. I think we've made some great strides on initiatives in that area, not the least of which has been our annual Youth Summit. The second one of these is being reported on at item 4.16 this evening.
Councillor Crassoy, I don't mean to interrupt, but would you like to formally move your motion and we need to second it before you speak to it?
Oh, I think it has a seconder on the business paper already. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
But we need to formally do that, please.
I'd like to move the motion.
Is there a second? Yes, Councillor McLaughlin. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. So our annual Youth Summit was something I'd definitely been advocating for behind the scenes in a pursuit of how we could find ways to have our youth engage more with council. The second of these is reported at item 4.16 tonight. And when you read that report, you'll see that the objectives of that are aimed at teaching our youth at the school level how to harness engagement within their schools, but also in the broader community, and how to bring their insights to connect them to local council. The idea being that once they leave school, they do become those advocates and that young voice that will grow into young adults and then adults in our community. That summit also provides us as a council some insight into how better to connect with that youth voice and how to action initiatives in partnership with our youth. And I agree that there hasn't been enough of it in the past, but certainly in the last few years, it has actually grown very well. Obviously, climate and the environment has been at the forefront a lot of our younger minds in the community, and I guess the reason I've brought this motion now is because I have felt quite privileged to have chaired the first committee that did actually seek youth expertise in our Sustainability Advisory Committee. It is so much richer as a committee for having those young people on it from several of our local high schools. The matter-of-fact way that they haven't shied away from speaking up and being the voice of young people in our community and within their school communities, it's just been so impressive. And I guess it's really driven home for me the importance of a youth voice on all of our committees, and to have, I feel like to have that represented is an easy thing to work into the terms of reference for committees going forward. Starting a whole new committee will be the job of the next council. I've really been quite chuffed to have supported youth advocacy. For example, when young Amelia Huxley, a Year 7 student at the time, contributed so enthusiastically to our library working party. And then a year or so later, she spoke so confidently to council on our climate emergency. We had a bunch of local young bush bike riders, Jack and his friends, carefully compose a submission to council and present to council for consideration of an area for them to have sanctioned use of their BMX and mountain bikes. Their efforts tell me that, and I hope that they tell the council too, that our young people want to be included in these decisions on all of these committees, not just one, on all of them. So that old adage of being seen and not heard, I think, is a thing of the past. Youth engagement, I think, in the last 4 years has grown far more than tokenism. And we have the General Manager, Lisa Miss Campbell, and the staff who work with her to thank for embracing our young people and their voices. I'm glad to have advocated behind the scenes, and we've seen a lot going on operationally, but some things, such as a change to our terms of reference for our existing committees, require a motion of council, and that's what this is. So if we resolve to do this tonight, it means that when all of our committees are re-advertised in the next term of council, this will be included on there. And wonderful to have a youth committee as well, but I don't think that's any reason we shouldn't be advertising and promoting all of our committees to youth with particular interests and a particular voice to offer. In fact, when I was about 37, I went along to the Seniors Advisory Committee at the time, and the chair, I was a resident wanting to get more involved, and the chair of the Seniors Advisory Committee said to me that actually the age to be eligible to be on that committee was, I think, 65 or 70. And she wanted to know what my interest was in the committee. And I said, well, I'm going to be 65 or 70 one day, and I want to participate in this committee and see what things matter to you and how I might be involved. But I only got to go to a couple of meetings because of their terms of reference. But as a young middle-aged person wanting to be involved on that particular committee, I didn't fit within their terms of reference. And so this is what I'm saying. I want our young people to know that our terms of reference welcome them and encourage them to participate on all of our committees. And I hope the councillors will support that and leave the formation of new committees to the next term of council.
Any further debate? Councillor Miles.
Just a couple of questions. I think, Councillor Crassor, you answered my first one, which is, did you see a youth representative on the seniors committee? Is that
what when I was 36 or 7, which is
no, I mean, like
14 years ago.
This would give effect to presumably a young person being on that committee. Was that something you think that should happen?
I would love to see that, Councillor Miles. I would love to put the invitation out there for a young person to sit on the committee. Now, if no one puts their hand up to do it, then you don't say, oh, we can't have a committee because we don't have a young person on it. But I think that in our community, some of our schools have expressed a great desire for greater intergenerational connection, and even children in Year 6 have said that they would be really interested to know what seniors are doing in our community. Certainly the residents of Twilight Aged Care have said to me that they would love to have more engagement with youth as well. So you'll get decisions for policies and activities that enrich that intergenerational connection if our seniors invite a young voice to be at their table. And likewise, if a youth committee does form in the next term of council, wouldn't it be wonderful if a senior, and I can just picture who it's going to be Phil Jenkin, who'll want to sit on that youth committee and hear what our youth have to say and how our local seniors can support them as they work with council for better outcomes. So yes, I would love to see youth on a seniors committee, on an access committee, on our sustainability committee, on our biodiversity committee, on our arts committee. Yes, I think youth voices should be in all our committees. Thank you, Councillor.
The second question is through you, Mr. Mayor, to the General Manager. Given that we'll be amending terms of reference, wouldn't that have to come back to council? Or can that be done by this resolution?
Mr. Acting General Manager.
No, I think it can be done through the resolution, councillors. We're not changing policies or anything. It's just the constitution of the committees.
And my third, not question, but I wonder whether Councillor Crassoy would agree to a point 4 going into the resolution that we seek to form a youth committee akin to the one that Ryde Council has, whether or not Councillor Crassoy would be open to that idea.
Are you moving an amendment, Councillor Martin?
Just asking Councillor Crassoy whether she'd be open to the idea of I'll move an amendment. I'll move an amendment in point 4, which I hope can just be added into the recommendation that Hunters Hill Council seek to form a youth committee.
Is there a seconder to the amendment?
I think that Councillor Miles has asked if I'll take it into my motion, which I'm happy to do on advice of the General Manager.
Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, my apologies. I would have thought that would be the business of the new council when they form their new committees, in which case it's not the business of this council to do that. I think the terms of reference for our existing committees is just actually going to help the next council because they'll have a lot to learn in those early months, and having that in the terms of reference, the actual forming of a committee, Mr. Mayor, through you. Otherwise, I'm happy to take it in. I'd love to have it on there. So.
Well, I think it is a role for the next council to determine what committees it wishes to have. So,
can I make a comment, Mr. Mayor?
Well, Acting General Manager.
I was just going to say, look, I think if the wording was to be changed, that we bring back a report on the possibility of creating the committee, because I think there's a lot of work that needs to go into it. My experience in the past, where we have had committees, we've struggled to keep the membership, so we've got to make sure if we're going to do it, we do it properly and we give it relevance, and it works. It's going to work long term. So, and that way, the new council would have the ability then to create the committee or not, based on the council officer's report. I just think that'd probably be the best way forward.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Is that what you're intending, Councillor Miles?
I'm happy to amend my amendment to that.
I'm happy to take that in. That a report be brought to the meeting for the appropriate meeting of the next term of council for the formation of a youth committee.
Yes, Councillor McLaughlin, are you happy with that to be incorporated?
I'm happy with that amendment to be incorporated.
Now, before we go any further, I'll just make sure that the minute taker has been able to capture what's been discussed here before we move forward. Can we have that up on the screen, please, so that we can get the wording correct? You need to roll it up a little bit, or down, sorry. We're still not.
We just need to add some words to the last dot point. To the report be brought to the appropriate meeting of council on the formation of a youth committee detailing constitution, membership, and an operational plan. I think that's probably what we're looking for.
Are you happy with that wording, Councillor Cresswell?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Councillor
Second. Now, if you like to just move it up so we can see the full motion, it'd be useful. That's point 4 in the motion. Are we going to complete that sentence or not? And it's point 4.
Sorry, it's just a bit, my info council just froze. Can you repeat that again? Sorry, Councillor Cresswell.
No, the acting general manager.
Yeah, that we just had on the formation of a youth committee, comma, detailing proposed constitution, membership, and meeting schedule. I think it might be the way to sort of comes on. That's more of the operational plan, but that's, yeah.
Is that your
operational plan? And
actually, constitution, purpose, membership, and meeting schedule. I think that covers it. Then we can get everything in that report. Then,
Councillor, sorry, is that what you're happy with? And Councillor Miles, is that what you were intending?
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Cresswell, you happy? Councillor McLaughlin's is happy. And could we make that number 4, please? So that it's clear that it's the 4th part. Is there any further debate in relation to the motion as it now stands? Councillor McLaughlin, do you wish to speak? You need to unmute. Could you unmute, please? Yep. You need to unmute. You still. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I couldn't see myself on the screen to unmute myself. Look, I won't add much more, but as the seconder of the motion, I just wanted to just say that Councillor Crasso did cover very eloquently what I was going to say, so I don't think I need to say much more. And she did produce several compelling examples of how young people in our community have really enriched the way that council has moved forward with its decision making in this last couple of years, particularly. And I've seen that myself with the Sustainability Committee. The reps from the local high schools, you know, they just bring they bring their A game to those meetings every single time they come. They're always fully prepared. They have a wealth of knowledge. They often use it as a bit of a project, you know, for them to learn something else about a particular matter. So it's just incredible to watch. I've also had the privilege of chairing the art committee for 9 years, and we've often had young people on the art committee as well. And again, they just bring enormous passion to their role. So I do commend this motion. I think it's a good one. I absolutely support the amendment, and I'm looking forward to our committees just being so much better as a result of the input that these young people will give us.
Any further debate? Councillor Sanderson.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I would like to support everything that's been said about this. I think it's a great initiative. When I was drafting the terms of reference for our Sustainability Advisory Committee, it was something that Councillor Crasso suggested to me, and I took on. And I tell you what, it's been a great outcome. I mean, the contribution of the local school students to that committee has been way beyond the expectations I have, or I had at the time, even though I thought it was a great idea. And some of the things that they've come out with are things that many of us would not have thought of. So it is an incredibly valuable contribution, and I hope I'm around to look forward to working with committees with more youth representation, and I'm sure they would liven up seniors access and inclusion committees, and I'm sure the interface with our seniors would be brilliant.
Any further debate? Councillor Collins.
Yeah, look, I think anything that this council can do to better engage with young people in the area, I think is a positive step. I think this council has been terrible in this regard. We've seen a lot of decisions over the last few years that have completely ignored the needs of young people. The biggest one obviously being the all-weather playing surface at Gladesville, which is used by hundreds and hundreds of kids that want to get outside and play football, and now won't be able to, do that after the rain and things like that. So in situations like that, we've got a council here that has neglected their responsibility to young people. And so I think anything that can give a voice to young people is going to be a positive thing. Now, we've got on the School Safety Committee, which is the committee that I formed with Councillor Miles to improve school safety in the area. We've got young representatives there, and they've been fantastic and given some great insights. I think it's going to be far more powerful having a voice of a group of young people in a youth forum or youth committee, rather than just having one on each committee. I think, and I thank Ms. Prieston for the suggestion of actually having this youth council, because it's going to actually give a voice to young people, not just one voice on a committee. It's going to be its own voice, and for once, I think this council is going to be accountable to a group of young people that are going to make sure that the interests of young people are considered in these decisions. Yeah, well done to Ms. Prieston for bringing that up, and I'm really looking forward to seeing this happen. I really hope that we get as many young people involved in this, and it becomes the committee that holds this council to account, to make sure that we are looking out for the interests of young people. So I very much support forming this committee, and I look forward to some better decision making from the next council.
Councillor Crasso, right of reply.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I think a lot's been said. I did just want to reiterate how much great work this general manager and her team have already done. Our previous general manager, Lisa Miss Campbell, and her team have already done in recognising that we need to make Hunters Hill appealing to youth and to young adults. I remember Angus McCaffrey coming to Councillor McLaughlin some years ago and advocating for an outdoor cinema, and how hard Councillor McLaughlin worked and the other councillors worked to make that happen. It was a great outcome for our community, and our Bar Didier, our pop-up bars, and our local events that encourage young adults to live and stay local. I remember young people supporting a suggestion that we advocate to the state for a trial bus running off the peninsula between Woolwich Dock and North Ryde, to try and make it easier for people to stay living in this beautiful suburb while they work out of the area with better transport options. So it is already happening, but having this voice will actually really make it happen more. And I'm just really excited to have been part of promoting it to the next term of council, and I hope they embrace it as much as this term has. Thanks everyone for supporting it.
I now put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried unanimously. We now move to item 4.1, which is in relation to Collingwood Street. We have some speakers, or are they being read out, Mrs. Dowse?
They are being read out.
Could you please do that for us?
Not a problem. Mrs. Susan Collis As a resident of 74A Woolwich Road for almost 60 years, I request urgent attention to the repairer of this council access road. I note the information in Council Report 21.6 that capital funding from RFG program of $92,935 will be allocated to the construction of Collingwood Street, so assume work can at least start without further delay. This access road has been closed by council due to storm damage, and I was alerted to this via a letter dated the 26th of March 2021. Since this date, I have know the area has been assessed by external engineers and surveyors, and their reports have been submitted to council. Since March, I've received no written information regarding action and timeline from council. As this is the only vehicle access to my property, it is causing increased difficulty in many ways. Having suffered heart surgery and a recent stroke, I ask the council consider this matter of urgency. Of course, this also assumes that any emergency vehicles needed to either my home or the Baths area would have no vehicle access, which would, of course, be a serious concern to council. Thank you for your help in expediting this repair ASAP, Susan Collins. I also have a second one from Mr. Mike Aston of 70A Woolwich Road. Your councillor worship and councillors, my name is Mike Aston, and my wife Melanie Buffier and I have been residents of 70A Woolwich Road, one of those affected by the closure of Collingwood Street due to flood damage. Since the 19th of March 2021, we have had no vehicle access to our property and have had to walk around 130 metres between our house and the Woolwich Baths parking area. Notwithstanding the significant inconvenience of having to make this walk in all weather and at night, dragging trolleys that we've had to purchase to deal with shopping and other heavy items, there have been other more serious repercussions. Current COVID restrictions aside, my wife's 94 and 96-year-old grandparents have been unable to attend family events at our house. Services and deliveries involve extra cost and complication, which has proven immensely frustrating. More seriously, particularly due to the lengthy ongoing delay in getting the road repaired, emergency services such as fires and ambulance are unable to reach the two affected properties or to attend the users of the baths. If this road repair does not proceed with all urgent speed, the risks increase that such a situation could arise with dire consequence. To date, we and our neighbours have endured the road closure with good humour and patience, but as time marches on, now 4 months and counting, this patience is wearing thin. When considering this resolution 4.1, I ask councillors to put themselves in our shoes and ask how it would feel as a ratepayer not to have such a basic right as reasonable access to your home for such an extended period. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Councillor Sanderson. We can't hear you.
Yes, I'll move the recommendation, although I could suggest one very small change. Instead of the word undertake in point 4, we make it expedite.
Okay. Councillor Miles has seconded that. Do you wish to speak to your acting general manager?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just want to advise council that on the 16th of July, Hunters Hill Council was included in the natural disaster declaration for the storm event on the 10th of March. So that's a good sign in relation to funding. I'm not saying we've got the funding, but we will have a much better position to request it. So I just thought to give council some a little bit more information.
Thank you for that. I think that's very important to be aware of. Councillor Sanderson, do you wish to speak to your motion?
Yes, briefly, Mr. Mayor. I think it's absolutely essential that we get the access back to these properties as soon as we possibly can, which is why I suggested that we make that minor change to the recommendation. We use the word expedite rather than undertake. I think it's very important. It's very sad that the people of Collingwood Street have had this inconvenience for this length of time, and I welcome the report, and I think we just get on with the job.
And Councillor Miles, you are happy with the term expedite?
Yes, very much so, Mr. Mayor.
Yep. Okay. Any further debate? If not, put the motion. All those in favour? Against, declare it carried unanimously. We now move to item 4.2, which is end of term report. Is there a mover? I'll move it. Second to Councillor Miles. I think it's always important to reflect on what we've done as a group, as a council, over the last 4 years. And this report is a statutory requirement. And I think it does cover a lot of the initiatives, a lot of the outcomes which this council has been able to put in place for the benefit of its community. And I'd like to also thank the staff over the last 4 years for their loyal service and their dedication to this community. We've had a change of general managers during that period, and I thank both Barry Smith and Lisa Miss Campbell for their contribution, and more recently to the acting general manager, Mr. Tobin. So I think, I believe that this report is a good capture of what this council has been on about and what it's achieved over the last 4 years. Is there any further debate? Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just simply add that I think this has been a transformational council, and I think that whichever council takes over from us after September, they will have a far easier route than this council has had. So whether or not I'm part of that council, I think it shows that Huntersville has a great ongoing future.
Any further debate? Councillor Collins.
Look, just briefly, Mayor, thank the staff for the report. I just want to draw attention, page 35, when we're talking about a financially sustainable organisation. It says here, our long-term financial plan details how we will achieve financial sustainability into the future. Now, the 10-year projected budget shows deficit in every single year for operational budget. At this point in time, this council is not actually financially sustainable, and there is actually no plan. There is actually no tangible plan to make this council financially sustainable. It can be, but it's going to require councils actually being more approachable to be, look at these issues like the property strategy, moving faster on things like the library service, which has basically been brought up several times throughout, all these reports. We could have done that years ago. We're saving $500,000 a year. We've got instances where I think the projected deficit in the current form is $8 million over the next 10 years. If you add in line items that shouldn't be there, such as futures savings, which haven't even been come up with, we're approaching $10 million over 10 years. So what I will say to those that have said that this council has somehow left everything in a better state and that everything's okay, it's not, and it's going to require the next council to have a bit of financial acumen. And honestly, I think that if any councillor or potential councillor looks at the financial accounts and says that everything's okay, they probably should be on this council, because they're not actually understanding the numbers. So the next 4 years are going to be very important for this council, and I hope that we have people on council that can actually come up with a plan to make this council sustainable in the future. There are a lot of great things that have happened over the last 4 years, but there's also a lot of things that haven't, and those are the things that disappoint me. And I know I brought up the all-weather playing surface before. That was just a wasted opportunity, and I hope that the new council, will support that. I'm glad that we finally got our footpaths, the real information out there about the state of our footpaths. And now, following the motion that Councillor Myers and I brought to at the last meeting, all the footpath networks have been mapped, and every resident can actually have a look at the state of the footpaths out in front of their own home. Just go to Hunters Hill Council website /footpath network, or Google Hunters Hill footpath network, and you can see the kind of work that we have to do in the coming years. So thank you to the staff for this report. Thank you for everything you've done over the last 4 years to support this council. I apologise for all the things that you weren't able to do because of the lack of decision making on this council. But let's hope that we can take some of those great ideas that the staff have come up with and actually do something with them in the coming years. And particularly exciting to see a better financial outcome and also better representation of the youth of Hunters Hill. So I commend the report.
Is there any further debate? Councillor Crasloy.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. It's sounding like me like this is the part of the meeting where we're taking the opportunity to wrap up from our term on council, and I guess it is because that is a bit what this report is. So I would just like to say that, as one of my fellow councillors said to me once or twice, it's not personal, it's politics. I would argue that it is personal and it is politics, and that sadly the politics has gotten personal, and that's a great shame. Despite that, we as a council have managed to put in place some significant strategic direction to support our general managers and their teams as they have taken our planning processes to state-of-the-art level. And they have developed operational practices that will make budgeting for and delivering our ongoing asset management efficient, trackable and reportable. While rolling out record service delivery in this few short years, we've also greatly improved our methods of gathering data, consulting, and our processes to ensure that continued improvement will happen in service delivery. We've been innovators, piloters, and activators of greater community engagement and citizen participation, not the least of which has happened over the last 2 years with this unusual pandemic. And I would really like to congratulate the council staff who have taken this personal mission to make our community feel so safe in such a strange time. Our circular economy partnerships with universities, our place planning, and hopefully soon our master planning. So while some of my fellow councillors regularly refer to our important tier of governance as local government land, as if it's some kind of a sandpit for would-be party politicians to cut their teeth, I tend to feel that local government is actually not a land at all. It's the real world, and it's the coalface. It's where the 3 R's matter, but in no greater measure than the community and the social outcomes that we have seen at their very best in these last few years. So I would like to thank the community who helped us develop our strategic plans, and the staff and the general manager who helped deliver it with such commitment and such acumen. I would also like to thank my fellow councillors for their support, particularly the mentoring and friendship of Justine McLaughlin. I get teary, but her advice has been invaluable to me as I've grown as a councillor. I think the next council have some really important ducks lined up from this term of council. And I hope that they continue to govern and uphold our community values as strongly as we all feel about them. Congratulations to our interim General Manager and the council staff, to Mayor Mark Bennett, who saw us into this term of council as we set up a lot of these ducks, and to Mayor Ross Williams for taking over the reins towards the end there. I think it's a great report and it speaks spades about how much has been done in this term of council. Congratulations to everyone, particularly the community.
Thank you. Is there any further debate? If not, right of reply, just in brief, I think Councillor Crasloy has summed it up wonderfully. I think it has been a very exciting opportunity for this group of councillors and staff to create a transformation of the council after several years of uncertainty around its future and merger, to come out of it now being sector leaders in the local government industry in many aspects. And I think Councillor Crasloy has pointed to many of those. So, as I said at the start, it's been a team effort by council, councillors, staff, general managers, and as Councillor Crasloy rightly pointed out, the community. And we have done an enormous amount in setting up the future. I'm not pessimistic about that. I think financially council can and does have options available to it, and it has spent a lot of time working on how it will sustain its financial future. So I'm very optimistic. And again, I thank community, council staff and councillors for the last 4 years. And I think the report stands as a credit to all those who participated. So I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried unanimously. We now move to the next item on the business paper, which is, just let me get there, 4.3, which is the review of delivery program. Is the mover of the motion? If not, I'll move it. Is there a seconder? Councillor Sanderson. Yeah, I'll just reiterate what we've talked about before. This is a statement of progress in our delivery program. And if you look at the report in the attachments, the vast majority of those, and I can only see a couple for good reason that have got red dots, the rest are all either completed or in progress. So it is, again, a credit to our staff and the ability of council to give clear guidance. Is there any further debate? If not, put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Declare it unanimous. We now move to the next item of the business paper, which is a summary of council's investments as at 30th of June. It's 4.4 on the agenda. Councillor Miles has moved it. Is there a seconder? Councillor Collins, do you wish to speak to your motion, Councillor Miles? Nope.
I just might have a question of the General Manager. I noticed that we've got a new investment here, the T Corp Medium Term Growth Fund, which has performed quite well. Is there an intention to increase our investment in that fund?
I might ask the director if she'd like to comment, and then I'll add some words.
Yeah, thank you, General Manager, through the Mayor. Our limit is 10% on the portfolio against the investment policy. So at some later point, we may increase that. We have several large-scale projects that are coming to play, capital projects. So for the meantime, we have it at 1.5 million, but potentially up to 2 million in consideration of our cash flow requirements.
Okay.
Thanks.
Acting General Manager.
I'll just say then we also continue to take the advice of our investment advisors along the way. So combination of those things.
Okay. Is there any further debate?
Yeah, I just want to briefly, because we do have quite a lot and look, this will be something for the next council. Hopefully that they will, consider the idea of an investment committee, as I've suggested before. We've actually locked up quite a lot of money in these term deposits with a horizon beyond a year, which is okay because they are A-rated securities. But I would just question whether or not it would be wise to increase that. I think it would be a good idea to increase the amount that we're putting into T Corp. And if it is only 10% that's allowed, I think it would be worth considering increasing that at the next term of council, because these returns we're getting on it. Basically, this T Corp gave us I know there's obviously when there's a potential downside, there's ups and downs, but we got 1% in a month. Obviously a good month. And really these annual, that we don't even get that in a year with some of these investments. So what we really need to do in the new term of council is to really dig into the detail here about how we're going to manage this money and get a better return on it. And it's unfortunately that hasn't happened this term of council for whatever reasons, but hopefully that can be done in the future.
Is there any further debate? Right, reply, Councillor Miles. Nope. Put the motion. All those in favour? Unanimous. Declare it carried. We now move to Council 4.5, status of council resolutions as at June 2021. Is there a mover? Councillor Crassoy is the seconder. Councillor McLaughlin to receive and note. Any discussion? Sorry. Councillor McLaughlin, you're not seconding it? No. Okay. Councillor, could you unmute, please, so we can clarify what your intent is?
I don't know if there was a second or not, but I'm happy to second if it is. But I was actually putting my hand.
Who seconded it? Originally, Councillor McLaughlin put a hand up, but Councillor McLaughlin, are you seconding or not? You are. Okay. Fine. So it's Councillor Cresswell, Councillor McLaughlin. No debate. The council, right? Wish to speak to your motion, Councillor Cresswell.
I'll sit for a moment. I know Councillor Sanderson has something to say.
Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Councillor Cresswell. Yes, I just have a question in relation to whether there are any further developments in terms of the matter at Woolwich Marina, which appears on page, or goes for some time, commences on page, so the sticker over it, page 32 of the business paper, page 8 of the report, in relation to possible non-compliance with development consent at Woolwich Marina.
And what's your question?
Well, through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm just simply asking whether there's been any further progress to what is reported in bold on page 34.
Mr. Acting General Manager, can you assist?
Director.
Through you, Mayor, we've, following a show cause letter and an investigation that they've agreed and acknowledged that the 2 car parking spaces are within the structure, within the building. They initially wished to incorporate those 2 additional car spaces out on the subject site. However, we indicated to them that they would need to amend their initial application or lodge a further application. In our discussions only last week, they were in preparation of preparing an amendment to the initial application to reiterate and further clarify the on-site car parking on the subject site. So we're just monitoring that and waiting for them to come to us with an amendment to the DA.
Thank you for that response. Is there any further debate? Councillor Cresswell. You need to unmute. Yes.
Question, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. Through you. I noticed the item about the Baronia Park placemaking and place design. It says that the latest update is that the committee will meet in July. And this is just a question. I've not been in caretaker mode as a councillor before. It's my first time on council. What happens with that when that committee meets now that we're in caretaker mode? Are councillors still able to attend that meeting, and can councillors be notified about it if that's the case?
If we're in caretaker mode, then council and its committees are in suspension. So is this a committee of council? And if it is, then it won't be meeting until the
So it's a working group that it says in the document that it's to meet in July. So I guess that's before caretaker mode, isn't it? So I just answered my own question. Sorry.
Yeah, that's fine. Any further debate? Right of reply, Councillor Crassoy. No. Put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried. We now move to item 4.7. 4.6, which is the disposal of proposed sale of road reserve adjoining 1 Vernon Street, Woolwich. Councillor McLaughlin, you've moved it. Is there a seconder? Councillor Crassoy, wish to speak to your motion? Any debate? If not, put the motion. Councillor Sanderson. You wish to speak to your motion, Councillor McLaughlin, before Councillor Sanderson? No, Councillor Sanderson.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. There's just one. One thing should be noted as for correction. That is that the address is in Hunters Hill, not Woolwich. So wherever Hunters Hill appears, or wherever Woolwich appears in the motion, that should be changed to Woolwich, and the same should occur with any supporting documentation.
Yes, that'll be corrected. Mr. Acting General Manager. Is there any further debate? Yep. Any further debate? If not, put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Declare that unanimous. We move to 4.7, which is the Henley Long Daycare proposed change of control of the lease. Councillor Collins, you're moving the motion. Councillor McLaughlin is seconder. Do you wish to speak to your motion, Councillor Collins? Nope. Any debate? If not, put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried unanimous. We now move to item 4.8, which is the character statements. Is there a motion in relation to this recommendation? Councillor Sanderson, Councillor Miles, the seconder. Councillor Crasso, I apologise if I missed you, but the screen makes it hard to see what's going on. You wish to speak to your motion, Councillor Sanderson?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, this is an incredible body of work that is just so important. I commend Mr. Karepas and the consultant Paul Davies on this excellent work. This is just such an essential item for the protection of our heritage, which is one thing that is just so valued both by our community and all the people that visit Hunters Hill. It puts in place important protections that can be built into our future planning documents. This is one of the things that, again, we have set up for the incoming council. This is a great body of work. I really commend the work that has been done here and the benefits that it will achieve. It will make the job of bodies like a Conservation Advisory Panel and also other, should any matters get to Land and Environment Court, the material that's built into this will be so valuable. And I also look forward to the contribution they will make to both to our future LEPs and the future DCP. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Is there any further debate? Councillor McLaughlin and then Councillor Crasso.
It's not, again, I do commend this and the work that's gone into it. It's absolutely extensive. I just have a bit of a query. I know that this is only in draft and I hope some of these issues will be ironed out in the final reiteration, but I know that there's a move to excise the overpass or the interchange from the conservation area, and I'm just a bit worried, and perhaps through you, Mr. Mayor, the General Manager might be able to address this. If we do that, does that mean that there is more likelihood that we might get the likes of digital advertising through a lot easier, or billboards and the like?
Mr. Acting
ask
General Manager. Yep.
the director might like to respond. I think given the RMS's rules, probably won't make much difference, but he might have a different opinion. Director?
Yep, thank you. Through you, Mayor. Just want to clarify, it's only a slither near Burns Bay Road. It's in the mapping and it's not at the overpass per se. It's further towards the river area.
Okay.
And like the General Manager said, there's different type of rules there technically for planning matters. But it's only a mapping exercise at the end of the day. We're not reducing the conservation area within the overpass area or Church Street and all that area that you're concerned about. It's basically towards the water. There's a sliver down there. It's in the mapping. I can't find it at the moment. So it's not watering it down. It's actually fine-tuning it basically and providing better recommendations within those clear C1, C2, C3 and C4s.
Okay, great. Thanks for the clarification.
Any further? Councillor Presley. Yep.
Thank you, Mayor Williams. I just also would love to commend this document. I've thoroughly enjoyed reading it, and I would like to suggest, without suggesting an amendment, but I would like to suggest that Council consider inviting the consultant back and perhaps in partnership with the Historical Society, present a few community talks on the history of the mapping of Hunters Hill, because the document itself and the images have just been absolutely fascinating to read, particularly seeing Mary Reeby's role there so early in our suburb, which we all know about, but when you actually see it on the map and then you see the way the suburb evolves, it was just riveting. And I'm sure there are a lot of people in our community who would love to have this presented up at the Yarn in a series of talks or in a perhaps an interactive display of some kind. Just a comment.
No, very important comments, because as been said, this is fundamental to our understanding of what our area is about and the values which we place on it from a heritage conservation point of view. And that is an issue that is very clearly stated in our community strategic plan, the desire of the community to protect and have our heritage for future generations quite often comes from the understanding of the past. So I think that's all very important. And this, as Councillor Sanderson pointed out, will be a foundation document in consolidating and confirming our LEP DCP over the next 12 months or the first 12 months of the next council term. So it's vital information. It does provide very clear articulation for our community who wish to interact with land use change and development of their houses, etc., exactly what the community and the council is on about when it talks about heritage. So I also commend the report. Any further debate? Right of reply? Put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried unanimously. We now move to the next item on the business paper. That report is very long, so I'll find we're up to 4.9, the Gladesville Town Centre Master Plan. Councillor Miles, it's close to your heart. Do you wish to move the recommendation?
Yes.
You have, yes? And Councillor Cresswell has seconded it.
Do we have a speaker?
I do.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Mr. Russell Young, and he says the current council and staff of Hunters Hill are to be commended for the improvement in transparency in developing options for the master plan for Gladesville, so the community can actually see what is being planned behind closed doors. It is also sensible to consider a broader footprint of Gladesville Town Centre, not just Gladesville Shopping Village site, as was the case previously when council was selling public land to the GSV owner without public consultation or tender. It has only taken 3.5 years since the resolution of council on the 12th of March 2018 to perform this important piece of work. I am sure I am not alone in wishing that such planning was performed before the events of 2012-2013, or that it was performed more quickly after the resolution in 2018, but a proper master plan will be welcome. I encourage the council to realise the detailed information and engage in sincere consultation with the community. This process has been a vast improvement from council's previous performance when a DA for the Gladesville Shopping Village site was exhibited. There were approximately 297 submissions, approximately 99% of which were against the DA. Most of the objections related to the events that were completed before the public were aware, such as rezoning of the 180 flats in 10 stories, the sale of public land without tender, or the withdrawal of heritage listing of the timber cottage at 10 Cow Street. I do expect that what happened met the minimum legal requirements, but whatever publication of intended plans occurred, whatever consultation occurred, it was clearly inadequate. Hunters Hill Council clearly has a great willingness to engage in consultation around Boronia Park and Fig Tree, and the Gladesville Master Plan is certainly no less significant. There was a loss of trust in Hunters Hill Council when public land was sold by council without tender, and where important heritage listings of a timber cottage of 10 Down Street was withdrawn after inclusion in the draft local environmental plan in 2012. Applying the weakest heritage listing in a history of Hunters Hill Council. The only listing that includes curtilage was not a good solution to the situation that was created when the Mayor and the General Manager in 2013 agreed to dispose of public land without consultation or tender, and when the heritage listing of the building on it was withdrawn at the last minute before the adopting of the 2012 LEP. The actions of the 2012-2013 seemed focused on turning a heritage asset into cash that could fund operational deficits to the detriment of the Gladesville community. No attention was given to a much needed master plan, adding insult to injury. I thank and congratulate the current council and staff for conducting itself with far greater transparency. The development of the quality master plan and exhibition of it in combination with sincere consultation are critical to the rebuilding of trust and affection for Hunters Hill Council. It has taken a lot longer than we would have liked, but the development of the draft master plan for exhibition is a vast improvement. We look forward to proper public consultation in finalisation of a master plan that can be adopted.
Thank you. Councillor Miles, you've moved the motion.
Just a question off the back of that.
Yes, Councillor Cresswell.
Thank you, through you. Is the General Manager, Acting General Manager, and therefore might be a little bit difficult for a recently Acting General Manager, able to help the Speaker and anyone listening this evening understand why that process has taken longer than any of us had hoped it to take since the resolution of Council a few years ago?
Mr. Acting General Manager, is that too much to ask after your third week? You need to unmute, please. Unmute, please. Yep. Are we asking too much after 3 weeks on the job?
Oh no, it's a bit more than that now. It's going quickly.
Must be having fun.
Mayor and councillors, look, there was a planning proposal before the Department of Planning that needed to be dealt with alongside council considering the master planning of the site. That was only rejected by the department late last year, Stephen, or early this year, which allowed us then to finalise our master planning and now get it out to be able to get it out to community consultation. So I think that's sums it up. Steve, does that cover it?
I can add, and we put the background on page 150 on the council report. It stems from the council asked us to review those sites that were in court proceedings at a particular time along Victoria Road. Following that, we got good outcomes through our consultants, and the council then stated we should look at either side. So we went from Pittwater Road all the way down to Cow Street. It's a good sound planning approach. While that was happening, like the General Manager expressed, the planning proposal was then refused by the department. So in an overall urban design outcome and a better approach, we would incorporate the GSV site, incorporate stages 1, 2, and 3 as a whole, and that'd be the better approach. That's why it's taken a little bit extra time, but also time taken with regard to clarity with viability, economic studies, and also traffic studies to ensure that if the outcomes from the urban designers would work, whether or not it's viable. And that was the important component of the studies that we did, incorporated within all those stages. So it did take a little bit extra time, but it was comprehensive, and with base study reports that assisted us and to advise and provide that outcome to the councils with regard to this master plan approach. And like I said, a page in short, on page 150 and 151, it provides an overview of that.
Thank you. So that's answered the question very thoroughly. And I think that's important to note that we've adapted as circumstances have changed to get a very holistic approach to this proposal, this plan. Councillor Miles, do you wish to speak to your motion now?
Who, Mr. Mayor? The master plan hasn't, or the draft master plan hasn't come along, I guess, as speedily as some of us would have liked. But I think that it's in its current form ready to go out for community comment. I think this is something that we particularly need to get right, because if the planning controls around Gladesville shopping village and the interaction between that site and other sites adjoining Victoria Road isn't done right, council is at risk of creating a scenario that will do damage to the way that Gladesville functions, and that is on a number of levels. That's in terms of the overshadowing and the development of sites as they can occur, traffic and transport, livability, public open space, all of these things that are addressed in the GMU report that needs to be considered by the public. I'd like to thank Russ and the Gladesville Community Group that have been on this issue for pretty much all of my time on council, and have been studious about the way that they have engaged with council and its and development applications and planning proposals by the developer of the Gladesville Shopping Village site. It's largely up to them that we have seen poor proposals in the past rejected, both at a council level and by state government. And I think this is the first real step to getting the planning right in the Gladesville shopping precinct. And that doesn't just mean the shopping village itself. The master plan will cover the section of Victoria Road from Junction Street to Pittwater Road. And I think that's the crucial component, because the mistake council's made in the past is to focus on the GSV site in isolation, whereas the village of Gladesville needs to be looked at as a whole, and this is the first step towards doing that. So I'd encourage as many people as they can to look at what GMU have prepared and the options that they have come up with, which do deliver a retail shopping centre and a developable prospect for a number of landholders up there, but also, and probably more importantly, will deal with the need for public open space, green space, walking and accessibility in between Victoria Road and the shopping village, and between the Junction, Cowell, Massey and Pittwater Road intersections. Again, if we can look at this holistically, if we can do the high level planning and then get into the specifics in even the review of the LEP DCP, which is currently underway, we can get this thing right. And I know that we've got a really engaged community up in Gladesville. They're keen to see change happen, but it has to be the right change and it has to be appropriate to the area. So I'd like to thank GMU and the staff for preparing this report. It's very thorough. I'd like to make sure that all of the various data sets that we have undertaken as part of this process is also made available to the community, because I think things like traffic and litany of other studies that we've undertaken as part of this process need to be out there for public comment and for people to digest exactly what it is that these proposals would mean for adjoining streets and for the streetscape itself. So it's a good report. I'd like to get it out there and get the community involved as much as they can in accessing and commenting on the proposals, and hopefully it will give rise to the right development outcomes in that part of Gladesville.
Thank you. Is there any further debate? Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I concur with Councillor Miles on the discussion he's had. Certainly, one of the difficult problems has been tying all of the developments together. The holistic approach has been absolutely essential, and I commend all of the people that have been developing this. I look forward to community feedback on it. It'll certainly guide me, but it is just another part of the amazing body of work of this last 4 years of council. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any further debate? If not, right of reply, Councillor Miles. No, I think it's an outstanding piece of work, and we need to get that community feedback as soon as we can. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Declare that unanimous. We now move to the next item on the business paper, which is the 4.10 review of the Heritage Act 1978.
Mr. Mayor, we still have one person in the waiting room for item 4.17, which is the item that we, if council agrees, would that we're going to defer. And Reverend Armstrong said that he doesn't need to address if that's what's going to occur. So I just
well,
maybe we could put him out of his misery.
Motion to move that forward, Councillor Miles, Councillor McLaughlin. So put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried unanimously. We now move to item 4.17.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask that or move that we defer the motion?
Yes, you can. Is there a seconder? Councillor Sanderson. Is there any debate? I think it's important we get.
Can we clarify this is 4.17 we're deferring?
We are. Good. Yes, that's the item we've moved to. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Declare it unanimous. And Reverend Armstrong, I'm sorry we kept you in the back. Thank you. My apologies. So we now move to the 4.10, which is a review of the Heritage Act of 1977. Council submission. Yes, Councillor Jim.
I'd like to move the recommendation.
Second to Councillor McLaughlin. Is there any debate? Do you wish to move do you wish to talk to your motion, Councillor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have privately commended the director and his staff on this outstanding response. It's essential, again, as I've said before, that we advocate for our community, and our community has told us over and over how important heritage is. This is an outstanding response and so important. We cannot afford to see provisions in our Heritage Act watered down, and particularly at this time. I mean, at the present time, my understanding is that it's touted that the Honourable Dominic Perrottet might become the next Premier of New South Wales, and given his comments on demolishing items in the Bayside district, I think it's very important that we have the absolute maximum protection of a heritage through the existing legislation. So I again thank the director and everyone who's contributed to this excellent report.
Any further debate? If not, put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried unanimously. We now move to 4.11, which is again dealing with the matter of developer contributions. Is there a motion? Councillor McLaughlin? Councillor Sanderson, did you second it? I think we've covered it in the first debate. If there's no debate, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried unanimously. We now move to item 4.12, which is vending machine guidelines. Councillor Collins has moved it. Councillor McLaughlin second.
Just got for Ken, just a question through you, Mayor, to the General Manager. Look, this sounds like my concern here is the Category 1 food vans, which I understand to be ice cream trucks. Do we actually charge ice cream trucks that they come down to Buffalo Creek and visit and sell ice cream? Do they don't get charged, do they?
Mr. Acting General Manager.
Manager of Place and Projects, my understanding is that they don't, because one, we don't have a policy in place at the moment, but Beck might like to add something to that.
Yeah, currently they don't, but it's illegal for them to sell in our LGA because we don't have a policy in place. And that's what we're trying to do with this. So if they are licensed, they pay an annual fee and they're able to serve their products.
Okay, well then I'd like to move an amended motion. Look, I don't want to start charging ice cream trucks. I just don't see it. I don't think that's in the in the spirit of what we should be doing. Now, food trucks are a little bit different because we have we have restaurants. That I think we need to be careful that we don't cannibalise our own local restaurants with the food truck. So I think it's important to get that balance right. But if I can just strip out the ice cream trucks, now I'm reluctant to say.
Councillor Collins, you're amending the motion to that effect.
Yeah, I will amend the motion.
Is there a seconder of that motion accept that? You're on mute. Thank you.
I'll second it to listen to the debate.
Can I just ask clarification before we enter into the debate? Mr. Acting General Manager, I got the impression from the staff member that there was a legal obligation for them to be licensed. Is that what I understood?
Not charged, just have a policy.
Mr. Mayor, my understanding is we need a policy to say whether they're allowed in or not. The question of whether we charge them is a separate matter.
Okay, thank you. And is that what you're proposing in your amendment, Councillor Collins?
Look, yeah. So we don't have to charge them. We just have to have a policy. Is that right?
That's right.
Yeah.
If we want to charge them, we need to have a fee for it. If we don't want to charge it, we should have a policy as to who we allow and what conditions we allow them in.
Okay, and I agree with that. What I don't want to do is charge ice cream trucks that are going to be struggling. All businesses are struggling at the moment. Ice cream trucks, if they have to pay $250 to get a license to come down to Hunters Hill, they just won't come. And that means that there's no ice cream trucks in Hunters Hill. Now, this council before has quite unusually put parking meters at parks, and we finally got those removed at Buffalo Creek. I don't want the parking. I don't want to take away the ice cream trucks. So I'm going to propose that, look, I'll get advice from the general manager on this. I basically want to, I don't mind so much food trucks. I mean, the difficult thing is there's an annual fee here. We don't know how many times that's going to be used. Now, occasionally, if we have if someone wants to come up and put a food truck in, I think they do it That's on the other side. I'm not sure where the food trucks come in Hunters Hill.
Do you still wish to?
I'm asking the general manager a question there, so if you let me articulate the point I'm trying to make.
Please, Councillor Collins, could you ask a question?
So what I'm trying, are you finished?
I am, yes.
Okay.
What
I'm trying to establish through you, Mayor, to the general manager is what would you recommend the best way can we adopt this policy without the fees and then bring the fees back to a later report?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the issue we have is we actually need to inspect these vehicles, and really all that fee is covering is inspection. There's health regulations that they need to be adhering to. When you look at the fees we're charging, we're looking at $5 a week or $9 a week. They can come as many times during the week as they want. They can do Saturdays, Sundays, public holidays. $3.50. For $5 a day is not a lot. I used to get a lot of feedback that you're charging a square metre rate for cafes, but there's only one coffee a day, and if you can sell more than a coffee a day in your outdoor seating, so I don't think this is onerous on the food trucks and the ice cream trucks. I just think it's a good way to stop too many people coming in and putting a system in place that we can then regulate them and make sure that they're meeting all the health standards.
Thank you.
So if that's the case, so at the moment, do you, so it's illegal for them to actually sell ice creams. We adopt this policy, it means that they can, they need to register. Look, at this point, because we don't actually have we really don't have the information on who these providers are, how often they're coming, where they're parking. What I don't want to see is us adopting a fee structure that I think by adopting these fees, we will all of a sudden we'll see one or two things. Either the ice cream truck will go down there anyway and then gets chased away by the ranger, or they just stop coming down there. This report really doesn't show what impact imposing a fee structure. I mean, it could be done in any number of ways. They could apply online for a license and pay $10 for a day, right? But then an upfront amount like that, especially at a time like this, might actually deter anyone from registering and doing it. So I don't actually want to destroy this particular element of. I understand it's not working in the right under the right framework, but I don't want to destroy it with a fee structure. I think they should be registered. That's fine, but I'm going to move the amendment that considering food trucks have to register for each. For food trucks have to register and get approval from council, whereas food vans can just go in designated areas. Is that the correct understanding?
Not certain of that question, Councillor Collins.
Okay.
If you could just clarify it for me.
Oh, so the food vans, which includes an ice cream truck, they don't actually have to get permission every time, but a food truck has to get permission from council. Is that right? Have I got the right understanding there? Manager, have you answered that?
That's correct. Food vans are able to trade in the allocated areas, but food trucks require permission.
Okay.
Not an extra fee, just so that we know, because they're larger and they have.
Yeah. And what do neighbouring councils charge for a food truck?
Mr. Mayor, their fees are higher than ours.
How much are they per time? Do they do it? Are they all annual?
400 in ride for
annually.
Yeah. So everyone charges an annual fee. It's a standard across most local governments that allow food trucks and vans.
Okay. All right. Well, and where are the food trucks parking in Hunters Hill? What are some of the places?
Mr. Acting General Manager.
What was the most
Manager, are you aware?
So we've allocated 5 locations, so Baronia Park, Wheel Park, Buffalo Creek, Clarks Point, Bladesville Reserve.
But they haven't actually, food trucks haven't been here yet, have they?
We don't have a policy,
You don't
so
have
we
one.
haven't permitted it. It's separate. When we have an event, we invite them in and they pay a daily rate, which is around $2.50 a day.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, so if that's the case, because the food trucks are not here at the moment, the food vans are. I will just amend this policy to, for this stage, just to take away the annual fee for the food vans. That can be subsidised by the food trucks, and I would say that there needs to be there still needs to be a registration policy so that these vans can register. And I'll get advice from the general manager on how to best approach that. I want to take away the fees for the food vans, and that can be brought back at a later stage if that's a decision of the future council.
So can we get clarity of your amendment, please?
As I said, Mayor, I'm trying to ask the general manager how to articulate that point.
Councillor Collins, you've asked many questions and you've been answered now. We really, as a council, need to know where this matter's heading. So what is the amendment to the motion that you put?
Well, now I've articulated my point to the general manager. Perhaps the general manager will be able to suggest the way forward.
Mr. Acting General Manager, before you do that, Councillor McLaughlin is the second that we make a comment.
Seconder, I'm just suggesting maybe we just defer the whole thing until we get some further information about how we might move forward with this.
I'm happy to do that.
If we defer it, it won't happen until about October this year. So
the problem, and I'm quite happy to defer it. Unfortunately, we've got a situation here where they're all operating. Look, as long as there's no mistake, they're not going to be fined for not,
Could we please get clarification of what the motion is or the amendment the council is actually dealing with?
Can I maybe summarise that? What I'm hearing is,
for us, so the minute taker could get.
What I'm hearing is item 1 that the report be received and noted, that the mobile vending policy and guidelines attached to the report be exhibited with a change that no fees be charged for, which is the word I'm looking for, Beck?
Ice cream, food vans?
Food vans. And then a report come back to council following the exhibition period. Now, councillors, all I would say is that this is a policy that's going out on exhibition that has plenty of opportunity for people to come back and say they don't want to pay the fees. So I'm wondering whether we should just get it out there so that the new council's got policy.
Sorry, General Manager, I think you might be entering into debate about that.
I'm sorry, I'm a bit old at this.
Sorry. Yeah, look, thank you for clarifying that point. The reason why I actually want to put it out, it does need to go out. It's housekeeping that needs to be done.
You're speaking, Councillor Collins, what is the motion that we're dealing with?
The general manager read it out, okay? Now, the only and the suggestion was that we take away that.
What wording do you?
If you want me to, do you want me to finish my sentence so that I can articulate the amendment, or do you want to just keep interrupting so we don't get anywhere?
Could you please articulate the?
So, point number 2: draft mobile vending vehicle policy and guidelines as attached to the report be exhibited for a period of 28 days, along with the proposed fees to be included in the council fees and charges, excluding food vans.
Correct.
For which there will be no fee.
This doesn't come into place until the exhibition period is finished and council reconsiders. Isn't that the case, Mr. Acting General Manager?
Yeah, that's nothing can come in place until the policy's been exhibited and adopted by council.
And I'm suggesting we put out the policy where we don't put a tax on ice cream trucks.
well, we're not specifically mentioning ice cream trucks. You're talking about food vans.
Well, that's what an ice cream truck is, Mayor. If you've read the report, you'd see that there's food vans and food trucks. Okay,
Yeah.
Food vans are ice cream trucks.
Yeah, but there's more than ice cream trucks in food vans.
This is a ridiculous. I don't know. Are we debating here, or I think everybody understands the point. You can divide them up into as many categories as they want. But we shouldn't be taxing ice cream trucks.
Councillor Collins, please. Does the seconder of the motion agree to that, Councillor McLaughlin? Yes. Is there any further debate? If not, put the motion.
No, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to foreshadow an alternate.
Yeah, sure.
I would foreshadow that if Councillor Collins' motion is failed, I will move the recommendation as proposed in the business paper.
Thank you. That's a foreshadowed motion, so we're now dealing with the motion before us.
And I will speak to it.
I think you've spoken quite a bit. You wish to write a reply?
Well, I'm going to speak to it because I'm entitled to speak and I haven't been able to. So I think at this point in time, I think we need to be very mindful about imposing new fees and charges on businesses in particular. I think it's good that we have this policy, and I wasn't aware that it, that it didn't exist. But if we are going to tax ice cream trucks, I would not support that, and I think that should be that would have to be something of a future council. So I would implore councillors to support this motion now, and not do something that is going to mean that ice cream trucks disappear from Hunters Hill, parts of Hunters Hill.
That closes the debate. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Declare it lost. There was a foreshadowed motion.
Sorry,
what were you doing, Councillor Miles? Councillor Miles.
Voting for the motion, Mr. Mayor.
You're supporting the motion?
I voted in support of the motion.
Okay, the motion's carried. We now move on to item 13. 4.13, which is development applications determined under delegated authority. Councillor McLaughlin has moved it. Is there a seconder? Councillor Sanderson, any debate? Put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried. We now move to item 4.14, which is development applications determined by the Development Control Unit, June 2021. A mover? No one wants to. Councillor Sanderson, is there a seconder? Councillor Crassoy, debate? None. Put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried. Move to report 4.15, which is report of legal matters, June 2021. Councillor McLaughlin's moved the motion. Councillor Sanderson seconded it. Is there any debate? Put the motion. All those in favour? Declare it carried unanimously. We now move to item 16, 4.16, Youth Summit. Is there a mover of the motion? Councillor Crassoy. Councillor McLaughlin has seconded. Do you wish to speak to your motion, Councillor Crassoy?
Just to say, Mr. Mayor, that it was so well executed. The youth at it were so engaged largely, and from what the report says, there's opportunity there to harness a little more in the future. I'm excited to see where all these projects are going to lead to, and can't wait to hear more about next year's Youth Summit. There's going to be a lot of stuff for our young people happening in the next term of council, so congratulations.
Thank you. Is there any further debate? I just add to that, Councillor Crassoy, at the recent Principal Liaison Committee meeting, there was possibly opportunity next year to include some older, the more senior primary school kids into the process. Put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Declare it carried unanimously. We now move to item 17, been deleted, deferred. 4.18, minutes of the Local Traffic Committee held on the 17th of June. The mover, Councillor Sanderson, seconder, Councillor Crassoy. Any discussion? If not, put the motion. All those in favour? Against, declare that unanimous. That now brings us to the next item. The next item is 8.1. I think I've just got to find that document, which is in the committee of the whole. There's a motion to move in the committee of whole. Councillor McLaughlin, Councillor Sanderson. Is there any debate? Put the motion. All those in favour, against. Could you please close down the